So,
okay, okay, a lot of pressure.
Well, we get to just actually really just hang out. We're longtime friends. We've known each other for 20 years. You're in the same job still.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Okay.
And maybe just some quick context. My first investment ever as a venture capitalist was in Box in 2007. And so you're my very first.
Thank you.
And very special.
We owe you a lot. Actually, what was your official title at that time?
It was associate.
Wow.
Lowly associate.
So does everybody know has everybody tracked the Twitter conversation about associates? So everybody says don't pitch associates, and our evidence is that associates save the business. So we appreciate it very much.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was quite the honor to be on your board for many years, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to be involved with Box because, as I mentioned, very first board seat, and not many founders would let an associate join their board.
I didn't know we had a choice. So
tell us more. Tell us more.
I mean, when you're like 22 and you really need money, your uncle could have joined our board. So, but in this case, it was actually exactly the right decision. So, I think you basically invented PLG in the enterprise. Would you kind of confirm that?
I don't know if I invented anything in my life, but I will say that I viewed the surface area of the browser to be really exciting and interesting in 2007.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the first applications that would move into the browser would be the Windows File Explorer, because I grew up on Windows machines and as a kid, and I thought, well,
so you were primed for our pitch.
Totally. Okay. I was looking. It was called the fat pitch. I don't play baseball or watch baseball, but it's like the fat pitch for someone who was looking at the browser surface and thought that, wow, like you can finally upload and move files and share them in the cloud. And there came along Aaron Levie.
This is the kind of stuff you get excited back in 2007 about. So we had the same insight a couple years prior. So when we started the company, the idea was just get all your data in the cloud, mobile, cloud internet, cloud computing, cloud storage, and then internet was getting way faster. So we said, okay, let's put data in the cloud securely. And as we were scaling, we pivoted the company to being kind of a freemium offering in the enterprise. And you caught us right mid pivot.
Right.
And we had pitched a large chunk of the VC ecosystem, and I think you got it faster than everybody else. But then I think you basically had to make the case to your entire partnership at USVP at the time. So what was that like?
It was really difficult to pitch a somewhat commodity business, which was storing files on the cloud.
I'm offended. Yep.
Yeah, I get it, and it was. But because it was my first investment ever, I had to do an enormous amount of diligence, which was diligence companies like XDrive, try out the product, tell people that it was not as good as Box. I remember there was a company called Elephant Drive.
Yep.
Do you remember Elephant Drive?
I do. Big fan of that.
Great name, right?
Great name. Fantastic name.
No, it was
very trustworthy enterprise brand, Elephant Drive.
Yeah. Yeah, and there were literally probably 10, 15 other companies like it doing some sort of file sharing in the cloud. And interestingly enough, Dropbox had not yet been started.
Yep.
So they were not a competitor. So turns out both companies are now public. But it was because I was an associate, I had not a lot of agency, but I was in love with the idea of sharing files in the cloud and especially making it usable by enterprises who were now, in that time, still uploading files to FTP servers.
Yeah.
And you couldn't email large files, and there were services like YouSendIt.
Yeah.
So it was to me, it was the obvious place to have a application in the cloud that would be adopted bottoms up, PLG. And it was the first time we used the term consumerization of SaaS.
Yep.
And consumerization of software, which then led to things like Yammer and Slack and other products that came after that. But you created the category of consumerization of software.
Wikipedia doesn't say that, but we'll make sure that gets noted appropriately. But there's an interesting kind of point in all of this, though, which is, do you have to somewhat be like because when we were pitching lots of VCs at the time, essentially the general tendency was they thought that some bigger company would own the space and they would own the category, and people kind of got used to this idea that the incumbent would just be able to kind of roll in. Our approach was we had this disruptive business model. It was freemium, it was viral. You could kind of go in through the end users, a la consumerization, and then sell to the IT team. But basically, very few of the traditional VCs, Josh Stein being an exception, Rory, a couple others, kind of tapped into that there is something new happening. Do you see that there has to almost be like somebody from the maybe more junior in a classic sense to kind of see that something new is happening? How do you think about that today, especially in Kleiner?
Yeah, well, great point. I'm no longer new and young, so but certainly I think there's just the fact that my background actually is in semiconductors, so it wasn't like I was a software investor when I met you. I was a mostly hardware semiconductor investor who was just doing work thinking about how does productivity get impacted by the browser and cloud software, and thinking that the first application will be some sort of file sharing, the other would be some kind of communication thing like a Yammer or a Slack later on. But it does require a rethinking of like what are the tools and candidly like a freshman's mindset to new product categories, which applies obviously to AI, which is the next big super cycle that we're going through after cloud and mobile that we all went through.
Before we get to AI, because I have like 93 questions on AI, did you feel that same feeling? Let's say Slack emerges and it's like, well, why can communication be disrupted? Yammer emerges. Well, why can internal kind of corporate intranets be disrupted? Figma emerges. Why can we disrupt the traditional design and development process? How did you train yourself to sort of see that these incumbent categories were ripe for disruption in each of those cases?
I guess I've fallen into companies that are creating a category.
Yeah.
And when you create a category, you've created your own playing field, your own turf, and you get to play your own game a bit.
Yeah.
And and arguably the prize can be bigger.
Yep.
And you can win at the game because no one else is playing your game. And so I've generally liked companies that are like Box or Yammer that create a new category, or Slack that created a brand new category.
But you must be getting pitched all day long that something is a new category. So how do you discern whether this actually is a big category or not going to work? Obviously, founders everywhere are trying to figure out how do they go and create a category. What would you kind of instruct us all to think about on that front?
Well, on that one, just what are some obvious behaviors?
Yeah.
So let's take, for example, Slack. At the time of Slack in 2013-14, there were many ways for us to communicate with each other. We actually used to communicate using AIM.
Yep.
That's how we got to know each other a little better back in 2007. We'd obviously text a little bit.
Any AIM OGs in here? Okay. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, so basically everybody is really young.
And actually, I remember
there were like 4 people that raised their hand on that question.
His handle, as they called it back then, was it Box Aaron?
It was Box Aaron, yes.
Box
Aaron,
yep.
You had, was it Mamoon Ha?
No, that's Twitter.
No, that's just Twitter. Okay, yeah. What was yours again?
It's a little cringe.
Why don't you do it?
Moonzer22.
Oh, that's right. Very embarrassing. Yeah. Okay, yep, okay. Moonzer, wow.
Moonzer22, yeah.
That's tough, yeah. The problem with AIM was basically you created a screen name in high school, but then it became a corporate interaction paradigm.
Yeah.
If in 2000, like anybody who was interacting online between like 02 and 08, let's just say, you were using your high school handle or your
It's pretty embarrassing,
handle.
right?
Very embarrassing.
So there comes Slack, where you're no longer using your personal phone text message, you're not using email, you're not using GChat.
Yeah.
And it was sort of an obvious behavior, right? Don't you think? Like it would be great to have a way to communicate with your colleagues, have messages, but upload files.
But the default must have been this should just go into Gmail with GChat, and this should just go into Outlook with kind of the chat experience there. How do you know that this becomes a new category?
Do you remember using Slack for the first time?
Yeah.
How was it?
It was a lot better than those 2 experiences. Yes.
Magical?
I mean, to me, it was kind of like IRC, but with an interface.
Yeah.
So like I was primed for it, but I can see how it would be even more magical for most people.
Yeah. Wasn't it pretty awesome that you sent the message on your phone?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Using the iOS app.
Yeah, it was good.
And instantly, it was on your desktop.
Yeah.
And you go back and forth, and you're like, oh, I just messaged Tomas, and he saw it because he's either on his phone or he's on his laptop.
Yep.
Or his desktop, and Tomas was a friend of ours, but he's also works with me at Kleiner Perkins, and he was Aaron's CTO for many years.
A lot of the engineering, yeah. And so what was there a Figma equivalent?
Well, Figma was, again, it's the surface area is now the browser.
Yeah.
We're now getting accustomed to multiplayer mode in the browser, right? Like, I can share a file in Box and I'm in Slack, but now Google Docs, multiplayer mode, I can edit a doc, add comments. Now, how about apply that to design?
Yeah.
And Figma, the equivalent was now you moved that into the desktop software, into the browser, and made it multiplayer.
Yep.
Again, pretty straightforward. I like simple things.
Yeah. But I think what's amazing is that that each of these were true category disruptors. There's another element to, I think, your simplicity approach is all of these products were low-end disruptors in their category. So it's one thing to kind of create a new category. Palantir created a new category of software, but it's a top-down, you sell the $100 million deal. Yeah. Slack, Yammer, Figma, many others that we're not naming were these low-end disruptors. You go online, you start to use it right away. Do you have a sort of requirement or heuristic that things you have to be able to instantly start to use it? Like, what is that requirement?
I think there's all of these products, including yours, had a magical out-of-box experience.
Yeah.
The first time you used it, even when it was in beta, like Slack or Yammer, you're like, oh, this is really intuitive.
Yeah.
And what I found over the course of investing is that when some things work at a very small scale, they actually extend to 10x, 100x, 1000x, 10,000x. And if you look at the engagement of products like Slack and Figma, actually the depth of engagement that those products had when they had 1,000 users or 10,000 users has fully extended to 10 million users, 100 million users.
Yep.
In fact, the products get better and the engagement gets even better.
And do you, this is a pet peeve of mine, but I don't know if you share it, do you get worried when you go to a website that's like, call us for the demo, sign up for the webinar, or like, is that a filtering mechanism you have today? Yeah,
I mean, there are certainly businesses I've invested in that are like that.
Yeah.
But generally, like, I like to try stuff out myself. I obviously invest in things that we've spent time on and understand. But yeah, like you're looking for that beautiful out-of-box experience.
Yeah. So I would as one PSA, at least if you care about PLG at all as a founder, that sort of the first 30 seconds on the web page, being able to get into the product, getting to start to use it, I think is massive. Now, obviously, some markets don't sort of have that opportunity. If you're selling, just to the CISO, then there's less of a bottom-up play. But I do think more software than not tends to be able to have the benefits of a bottom-up play. And so, I would just certainly encourage all startups to think with that mindset.
Yeah, you invest in a lot of startups, right?
A couple, yeah.
Yeah, and I think probably 50 plus at this point.
More or less, yeah.
You have a specific thing that you look for.
Yes, but this one is kind of like you don't talk about your handle in AIM.
I did already, so
okay,
I think you have to talk about your thing now.
Are you talking about the word orientation? Yeah. Okay, shit. No, so okay, this is gonna like
stays here,
but half the room it's gonna you're like I don't want to like give critical feedback to everybody in the room at once, but. So I'm really big, as you can imagine, having a company called Box. I'm really into simple words for startup names, and so hence the elephant drive, kind of call out at the beginning. I just think sometimes startups can be a little bit too clever for their own good on the naming of their company, and like you might have an inside joke that worked with you and your friends, and then you turn that into a brand, and like yes, there's counter examples. I probably would not have predicted Datadog. As a $50 billion company, so I'd be like, what the fuck is the dog thing? So plenty of exceptions to this rule, but I'm a big fan of just keep it simple. Just like call the thing Stripe. It's just like cool, like a simple word, make it easy on the customer. I'm also big on .coms. Now you can do .ai. I'm a big fan of .ai is fine, but like don't do really weird TLDs. So just basically when you're a startup, you have so many headwinds. Everything's a headwind. Hiring people, your product working, getting customers, getting traction. So like you want to just like reduce all of the headwinds that are self-inflicted.
Yeah.
And like names are a self-inflicted headwind. Domains can be a self-inflicted headwind. the design of your app could be a just like clean up all of that stuff just to improve your odds. So that's a passion area.
Yeah.
So I know I sound a little crazy, so sorry about that. But all right. So back to you though.
Okay.
So PLG. Anybody doing a PLG motion right now? Okay. I can't really even see, so these surveys don't matter. So all right. So product-led growth. Any quick tips on how founders should think about this? There's a tendency which is, should you do a founder-led sale? Should you do a product kind of going viral and then adding sales on top of that? What do you tend to instruct folks on? And how soon should a PLG company hire their first salesperson or first sales team?
Okay, so this is specific to a PLG company.
Yeah.
That has a PLG motion.
Yep.
And we use a terminology called open for business. It's something that
You invented it.
Okay, at Box in 2008, we were, and maybe just I'll give the brief context, which was one day we were just getting together, catching up on Box, and it just seemed like I gave the feedback. It doesn't seem like our website is open for business.
Yep.
Like
I was like, it's a
we're not
website.
ready
It's not like a restaurant. It seems pretty straightforward. You just go on and
we're not ready to take orders.
Yeah.
And let's take some orders, and let's make it really easy to take orders. And and that's became like a.
Do you still use OFB today?
OFB, which stands for Open for Business, it's a part of the framework. Is a company open for business? Through the website.
And so today in 2025, what is an OFB versus non-OFB website?
I think from just a self-adopt, like
Yep.
you get there, you're very quickly able to get to value.
Yep.
Incredibly quickly. Either you see it now because you've got a nice little video thing on the site, and we've actually invested in a company called Arcade, which makes that process really easy to see how a product gets used without actually having to download it or use it, sign up for it. You can just see it. But I think seeing that out-of-box experience still matters. And I think to your question, okay, so there's a PLG motion, but we all know that most enterprise software companies thrive because they sell to the Fortune 500.
Yep.
You can't do that. What percent of the Fortune 500 do you have?
64.
64%. Okay, so you can't build a multi-billion-dollar software business if you don't sell into the enterprise. I think that's a truth, somewhat a hard truth for PLG businesses, but you have to eventually get there, which means that at some point you do need to hire your first salesperson and a sales leader and build out your sales organization, because large companies expect to be sold to, and they have needs that are bespoke at times, they're specific at times, and they need security, control, assurances, guarantees, contracts. They're relying on your software for critical business outcomes. And so at some point, even a PLG company like a Box or Slack has to hire their first salesperson.
What metrics would you want to see, or KPIs would you want to see to know that it's now time?
I'm not sure if it's a KPI. I'm trying to think of what the KPI would be. At Box, I think we hired our first salesperson when like $1 million of ARR or something like that. Which I think is probably the same today. $1 million of ARR. You've gone from, you sold the first $1 million of ARR, and now you need someone else who can repeatably do what you've done already as a founder. And you ask the question, as a founder, you're always selling. You have 3 jobs as a founder: is to raise capital, is to sell your product, and sell to your employees. Hiring people. And I think for a PLG company, it's sort of like that threshold is probably $1 million of ARR.
Do you see? If you had to choose which risk to take on, or which thing is more existential, is it a founder who hires sales reps too late or too early?
I think you can hire. I think experimentation is good. That's hiring early and experimenting and saying, we don't have product market fit. I can't get someone who is a good salesperson, presumably, to sell my product in the market because there's either it's the product or the salesperson. And if you've hired now 3 salespeople,
it's the product.
It's the product. And so it allows you to kind of figure out.
So you'd rather founders bias more toward let's get sales early to learn more about the market and our sales motion than too late where it's sort of like you miss a window or it's overtuned for only the product-led side and not a sales motion.
And there's always like this trap of, if we hire a salesperson too early, it's going to ruin the culture of our engineering team and our product teams. There's always we don't want to mess this up. And so I don't fully believe in that because if it's the core culture of the company, they will absorb into the culture of the company.
Yeah. Also, I think that I think that, and all of the companies that you've been kind of on the board of and funded, I think have probably all kind of successfully navigated this, which is you don't have to have sort of like one culture of like everybody just gets together and it's like we're both product, we're both sales, everything. It's like no, like sales, like here's the product you can sell.
Yeah.
Like go test it in the market, get feedback, bring it to product.
Yeah.
But product, you're in engineering. You're just shipping product. You're not going to get distracted by anything else. And so being able to have both of these things work together in concert, I've found it to be less hard than when we were growing up building a company. Everybody said that it was going to be.
I would say most product-centric founders actually love before they've sold anything ever. They love selling.
Yeah.
They love it being in front of customers. Like the people who I thought were the most engineering-centric, product-centric founders who didn't have sales in their bones, they love it the most, actually.
Well, you're getting feedback just in real time.
That's what they love, right?
Yeah, so I don't think there's as much of a tension as people have written about, and then I think this sort of brand that you have to choose, like, are you have a sales company or a product company? It's like, that's a false dichotomy that I don't think people have to kind of live by. Okay, let's fast forward to today. So now you're investing in AI. So you saw the...
Yeah, I know. I saw your principles for AI yesterday.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just ask you, like, you're a 20-year-old company.
Yeah.
What are you doing with AI?
We are, but then I kind of want to ask you the questions.
Okay.
So okay. I mean, we're in the process of effectively reinventing the company. Okay. So
don't tell your public market investors, though, right?
Reinventing while retaining all the current revenue.
Okay.
So yeah,
$1 billion in revenue.
It's going to be totally easy to navigate. Don't worry, investors. So now I say that flippantly, but like there are companies that have a very real, difficult, kind of high wire act. Fortunately, most companies in SaaS, if you at least have like a multi-tenant architecture, you're in the cloud, you have like a good data architecture and sort of underlying infrastructure, like AI can be an advantage and you can now do way more. We find ourselves in that camp. I think there's probably other companies that are maybe more existentially pressured. For our situation, we see it as basically all upside because now AI can finally let us do things with unstructured data and content that was never possible before. So is
it moving from workflows to agents now? And Box being the knowledge layer underneath?
Pretty much, yeah. That's the pitch. So
good pitch.
Yeah, thank you. So the idea is, all of this content is your contracts and financial documents and marketing assets, and inside that is obviously an incredible amount of intellectual property that if you could tap into with AI, you'd make decisions faster, you'd build better products, you'd automate more workflows, you could augment more of your workforce.
So if I wanted to write a contract,
yes,
based on everything you knew about this one folder, write me the perfect contract
yes,
with the most company-friendly terms for me.
Yep.
You could do that today?
We could do that today. We actually literally have a feature that you take a bunch of data and then you put an AI agent on it and it'll spit out whatever you want. Now there's asterisks, which is like the longer the contract, the more you probably should check page 17 to make sure it didn't insert something. But as models improve, you see what O3 is doing or Gemini 2.5 and even Grok 3 is actually incredibly strong.
What's your favorite model?
We have no favorites, so we like all of our partners. But you could get basically, you could save 20 hours on that particular process if you were to write a contract from scratch.
Right.
But maybe I'll go first and then pass it over to you on the investing side. But for us, we're basically reinventing the company in terms of how we run it and what it means to be an AI first business. And actually, interestingly, the thing I try and do is mostly spend time with like 10-person and 20-person and 30-person startups to figure out how they're running. And what does it, what would a company today that was started in 2025, how would they run their organization and run their business? And then as quickly as possible, how do you make sure that we at 2,800 employees are doing the same thing? And so effectively that's sort of thinking through what does it mean to run an AI first company, which is every employee should be AI first. We should be using AI to move faster on every single decision that we're making. We should automate the workflows that are automatable today. We should get out of kind of drudgery, which is just why have somebody spend 5 days of work to update an SDK or a library update when an AI agent can go and do that. Why take the time to onboard an employee that has to go learn the business for 3 months when an AI agent can give them, the right information to do their job
What's
better?
the coolest thing you've done at Box using AI? Internal.
Just a couple examples. Like one, I'll often, basically just like generate prototypes for a new product idea and then go pitch it to a product manager and engineer. By virtue of Box, having AI embedded into the product, we're generating just a lot of kind of corporate knowledge type use cases. I have a funny example where this past weekend I had a project that normally would be a few day project where you have to have like 3 meetings, you go pitch people. I can't reveal it yet because we'll publish it later, but think about it as just like some complicated knowledge worky kind of thing. I did it in about 10 minutes instead of 3 days. I sent it to our chief operating officer to give feedback on it. I didn't say that AI helped with it, not to get all the credit, but just it wasn't relevant. I was just like, hey, can you go review this? Any feedback? She reviewed the whole thing, and she had like very critical feedback in 2 or 3 or 4 areas, and those happened to be the only areas that I added anything on. So basically, and she had no context for which things I worked on, and it was like very mortifying because it just turned out like, yep, Claude 3.7 is just way better than me. So at like that's a task that a lot of people would normally kind of go and have done, but what we're trying to do, I think maybe one nuance relative to what I've seen published out there from some companies is generally a bit of a kind of keep what you kill mindset, which is that if you're a team and you apply AI, we're not going to then take your funding away from what you applied AI on. We'd rather you then reinvest back into the business, back into areas that are then strategic. So what you don't want to have is a conflict of interest, conflict of interest in a kind of subtle way, which is I don't want to use AI because I know that any efficiency gains I create for the company, those dollars will then exit my org and go in somewhere else. There are some rare cases where people can be very good kind of corporate citizens and balance that, but for the most part, what you then have is a culture of basically people saying, AI can't do that, so thus I need more resources, and you want to avoid that tension. So we've been just thinking about like, okay, if marketing applies AI and we can automate some part of a workflow or generate more good ideas to save time, the dollar savings should go back into marketing to just then do more creative work and do more strategic work. So there's a bunch of things that I think all companies are figuring out, but mostly it's about make decisions faster, build products better, ideate more quickly, serve customers more effectively. That's how we're running the company, and then we're obviously building solutions, for our customers to do that. So on the investing side, the corollary to me would be it looks exactly like 2008 to 2012, let's say in SaaS, which is like we're finally figuring out the template, it seems. Like there was a little bit of everybody was in the wilderness of like there was Salesforce that proved the model a little bit, then there's SuccessFactors proved the model a little bit, then 10 or 20 startups kind of started to emerge, and then boom, it just took off. Slack, Zoom, Figma, just everything. We had SaaS for every category. AI kind of feels like this moment where 2 years ago we didn't know, was it like chatbots, where we're going to have chatbots for every category. Now it feels closer to we're going to have AI agents kind of for different domains and workflows. What do you kind of see on the horizon? How do you think about it from an investing standpoint? How similar is it to those early SaaS days? What do you expect to see from founders, all of that?
I think it's actually pretty different because the lens that we've used is more the jobs to be done and quite focused on the application layer of companies. And because AI is just fundamentally, LLMs are just fundamentally great at certain tasks. And so just to give you all a sense, we took a point of view probably 2 years ago that let's go look at if you look at the top 20 jobs in the US, it's some form of doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And what if you could build copilots for highly skilled people who are highly scarce, and we're just not producing enough of those? So let's go invest in products that help those people. So we invested in Harvey for lawyers, Windsurf for software developers, Ambience for doctors, clinicians. And then we sort of worked our way down that sort of pay scale of like the 200, 250K as co-pilots to, the next layer down of just salaries and the nurses, financial analysts, salespeople, and so we're just kind of working our way through the pyramid of employment of like providing co-pilots, agents to do the job or to help do the job.
And what is what do you imagine the end business model of? I know it's hard to do broad brush strokes on this, but do you think it's all of these products start to to charge by outcome? Do they charge by hour of service? Do they charge by seat? What do you think the model is?
Yeah, there's still the seat-based pricing where you're the co-pilot to the lawyer. So that's the normal good old seat-based pricing. And in some cases where there's an autonomous agent doing a unit of work, you charge by the hour or by the outcome. And that applies to like customer support tickets where you're resolving a ticket automatically, and you get the agent gets paid $1 per ticket resolved. And like that's not 100%, but eventually this asymptotes to more and more. From if it's 50% today, it'll get to 80% in a year, and more and more. And these are jobs not necessarily that people want to have and do.
What do you think the TAM changes in software as a result of AI?
The TAM becomes closer to like a labor TAM. It starts to encroach into labor markets,
right?
Which is sort of the inevitable future,
right?
And
so like almost like a 10x increase on software spend.
Certainly, it could be, yeah.
What any final? I'm sure there's a lot of AI startups. Any final piece of wisdom of if you're pitching right now or you're scaling, what should you do?
Well,
as an AI
I would
startup?
say obviously I think most folks are probably doing something in AI, but if you're not, to us, it's the super cycle of all super cycles.
Yep.
There has never been a time when so much cool stuff is happening on the ground that has so many incredible implications on how we as humans live, work, and it's all kind of happening right now, and it's happening here in Redwood City.
Pretty close, yeah. Yeah, just down the street, actually, about a block.
Yeah.
I do think that, I like the super cycle. I think we are quite literally living through these moments that will get written about in 200 years, which is, AI happened, and it was a tectonic shift in, it basically is the next industrial revolution. Like we thought it was maybe the internet, that was super powerful, obviously, information flowing. The PC revolution let us kind of start to automate very basic things, but AI very clearly is the next industrial revolution.
It is the biggest one of them all.
Biggest one of them all. I actually land on the optimistic side, which is that it actually just creates abundance and it creates more opportunity for people. But the startups today that will get created, I think, will be the defining companies of the next century. So huge opportunity.
We agree on that.
And I assume that they can just pitch Kleiner on all of these ideas.
Please.
Great. Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you.